Good morning, guys. It's onion planting day. So let's grab a couple things first. That. Bone meal. And fish fertilizer. Okay. So I really should be using an all-purpose fertilizer instead of just nitrogen and phosphorus, but I don't have one. So this is what we're gonna use today until I get some more. It's like a gorgeous day. It's supposed to be moderately shady, like intermittent clouds all week, and the temperatures in the highs are in the 70s and the lows are in the 40s, which is much different from how it's been this last week where it was freezing in the 20s and teens every night. So this is why I've decided to plant the onions out now. I wanted to get a warmer week so they get established without getting knocked back by a freeze immediately after planting. But a couple changes I've made to the garden since you guys last saw. I did put this fence up. It's just these cheap little T-posts with this plastic netting. I already had this fence and I've had it for a while. But the chickens have been very bold in their escaping, and with all my garlic still growing, I just really didn't want to chance them getting in and ruining 6 months of garden work. So I put up this fence. It doesn't go all the way back there, but I'm just hoping the chickens will be too dumb to find their way around the end over there. So I've also added a layer of compost and straw to the tops of these rows that I finished off earlier in the year. So those rows are just about ready for planting, and I'm excited. So this is the bed I'll be using to plant my onions for this season. It is a brand new bed that I just recently created, and Freya has been in it, and I've got to clean it up just a tad before we get to work. So if you guys were with me when we made this bed, you'll know that the soil isn't very good in it. In order to fill on in a cheaper way, I don't use super great soil to fill my beds with. I just choose to amend them, and then over time, because I use a no-till method, the soil fertility will increase with added compost and breaking down of organic matter. So for this bed, I'm going to absolutely have to amend it. What I've got here right now is bone meal, which provides phosphorus, and then fish fertilizer, which provides nitrogen. That is not the whole gamut of what a plant needs to grow, but it's what I've got right now in my garage. So until I go and get a more broad spectrum organic fertilizer, I'm just gonna put the plants in there with that. So the bone meal I'm actually going to spread over this bed and then work it in, and the fish fertilizer is in liquid form. Obviously it's like ground up fish parts, but I'm going to mix it in some water, and then after all of these transplants are planted, I'm going to water them in with the fish fertilizer. Now unfortunately, because Freya has dug in here so many times, she ended up working a lot of this hay mulch in, which I don't love because I don't want it to really be mixed into the soil. But if I start scraping all of this mulch off so much, I'll just keep pulling up dirt, and I'm at a limited supply of soil right now. So I'm gonna try and scrape away as much of this as I can, but there's bound to be some hay worked in. It's not going to kill the plants or anything. I just don't want it a whole bunch of hay mixed into the top. So the onions that I'm planting today, I'm actually planting 2 different kinds of onions. Well, technically I'm planting lots of varieties of onions, but I'm transplanting 2 different ways. So from here I have onion plants, the actual like alive plants. I started these from seed inside, I think in January or something along those lines. I have never planted onion transplants before. I've always grown onions from seed in the garden beds at the time that I'm supposed to be planting them for my area, which is in October. I did not get around to it last year. So this is brand new for me, and I'm not certain that it's going to work. The issue with onions is that they are a biennial plant. So they bulb up the first year, and that's what you eat, is the bulb. You eat the onion. And then the second year, they go to seed, they flower. If onions are put through a lot of stress, either during their dormancy period or during their first year of growth, they can bolt or flower that same year. I don't know if I've handled these correctly, but obviously I'm gonna put them in the ground regardless. And the second way I am planting is with onion sets. So these were purchased in the checkout line of Home Depot because there's 60 onions in here, and it was only $5. That's a good deal. The problem with onion sets, and a lot of people don't recommend transplanting onions from sets, is because they can also have a high propensity for flowering their first year if they undergo a lot of stress in the packaging process during this dormancy period. They may just shoot up a flower stalk instead of giving me a really good bulb. Now, when onions flower, they go to seed, it doesn't necessarily ruin the bulb for eating. What will happen is that instead of putting all of this energy into the bulb to get one nice big giant onion, they send all their energy into that flower so that they can reproduce. So oftentimes, if you have an onion that goes to seed early, the onion bulb size will be greatly reduced, and then also its storage capabilities will be greatly reduced. So they're still edible, they're still good onions to eat if it has gone to seed, but they're not going to store as long, and they're not going to get as big if they hadn't. So I have two different varieties of onions that I did start from seed in January. And the first one is a Violet de Gaume. It is a red onion. And the second one is a Texas Early Grano, which is a yellow onion, I believe. So the way onions are classified is either short day, intermediate day, or long day. And it's going to be based off of your location according to the latitudes. So if you are below the 32nd latitude, at least in the US, you want to use a short day onion, because an onion variety, a specific onion variety, will bulb up depending on the amount of day length. So in the northern states of the US, you get longer days, 14, 15-hour days in the summertime. And then down in the southern latitudes, you get shorter maximum daylight hours. And onions have developed to bulb up during a certain amount of daylight. So you really do, if you are looking for bulbing onions and not just to eat the greens, you really need to plant according to your day length. Now these, your big box store onion sets, they don't tell you what types of onions they are. And they're probably a very generic, well-known variety. I highly doubt that all of these, or maybe any of them, are short day onions. When you buy an onion set package like this and they don't have the type of onion or anything like that, you're taking a huge risk. I'm not worried about it. I'm gonna try it anyways, because why not? And also it's a little experiment for you guys. I mean, I got this at Home Depot, so you can find these all over Home Depots all over the US, and wherever your local big box store is, you can probably find onion sets in spring. So I'm sure not all of these will bulb up, and a lot of them may go to seed this first year. But we're gonna plant both these transplants and these onion sets today, and I'm going to try and fit them all in this bed. So I have not counted how many transplants I have, but I do know there are 60 bulbs in there. And I'm not a very good garden planner, in the sense that I just kind of fly by the seat of my pants when I'm planting. So I'm not going to like map out exactly how many onions I need for here. I'm just going to start planting and see where the day takes us. So a really good spacing for onions is about 4 inches apart, and what I think I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna dig trenches. That's gonna be easier than digging a hole for each of these onion transplants. So I'm just gonna dig trenches, down the line of this bed and then drop the onions in 4 inches apart in each trench. So we're gonna start with this violet degami, and I'm gonna remove all of the transplants from here first and then lay them out so that I know how much space I have. I don't think I'm gonna have enough space for all of these onions in here. There's like a lot of onions in here and I have 2 of them and 60 sets. So I'm probably gonna end up throwing onions randomly around in the bed. We'll see how far we get. It's gonna be an adventure for both of us. I'm actually pretty thankful that some of these died in that freeze that we had, because I don't know if I would have enough room to plant if all of these had lived. Now honestly, if I wanted to, I could just plant them in the ground like this, and then as they start to bulb up, I could just thin them and, you know, use the tops as green onions. But I already grow green onions and I really like onion bulbs for eating, so I'm going to separate out most of these and plant them individually as long as I have the room. So the cool thing about onions is their roots are pretty darn resilient, and they're almost like this rubbery, harder feeling than most other roots are. So they are super easy to separate out. They just sort of slip and slide all over each other, and they don't rip a whole lot. I really do love separating onions. They're like my favorite plant to separate. So we've got 4 little onion buddies here. And that's hopefully 4 full onions. So I'm gonna leave, I've got these separated, but I'm gonna leave the rest of these onions in their little packs for now because I don't want them to dry out while I'm planting these individual ones. Alright, so we are halfway through the bed and almost finished with all the onions. So that turned out better than expected, but I still have the Texas early grano to plant on this half of the bed, and that leaves me with no space to plant the onion sets. So I'm gonna finish up this half of the bed with the white onions, and then we're gonna have to decide where I'm gonna put these onion sets. I have no idea. Oopsie. Okay guys, I have good news and bad news. The good news is all of the onion starts are in the bed. The bad news is 0 of the onion sets went in the bed. There is no more room. I literally have onions from end to end. which, don't get me wrong, it's awesome because I haven't grown this many onions before. But now I need some place to put the sets, and I don't have one. Okay, so I do have a place. These 1x4s that I have right here, they're the only 1x4s I have in my entire garden, and I always plant some sort of trellising crop over here. Obviously, this is here for a trellis. But with a full foot here, I mean, beans only take up, you know, this portion of the bed, which always leaves me with the outside to put things in. Now, the last couple years I have put flowers like nasturtiums and trailing nasturtiums over the end, which is cool, but I can now fit some onion sets in there. And I think I'm gonna do that because it'll be perfect when the onions get harvested, if there's anything to harvest. Midsummer, I can pull those out, and then that's when the beans should be taken off, and they'll have more room for nutrients and growth. So that's a good idea. Let's do that. So each year, I just amend these beds by putting more soil and more compost on top. And I never work that in because I don't want to essentially screw with the soil microbes in here. But every year the soil goes down, it sinks, it compacts, so you do have to add top amendments every year, or your amount of soil in your beds will just get smaller and smaller. Now, ideally, I would be amending with compost right now, and I still might go over there and check it out, but I don't think it's ready. I flipped it last week, and it's not ready yet. I can sift out some usable material, but that's gonna be a lot of work. So I'll take a look after we're done here and see if I'm gonna be using it just yet. But honestly, it's been so cold that the piles aren't even heating up anymore, and it just needs probably another month to break down. But ideally, I would be adding in the next inch of soil with 100% compost. Unfortunately, this is that bagged soil that's not super great, but it'll do. It'll be fine. It's just not ideal. What should I do? A white onion? I think I'll do white onions, because the Texas early granos are yellow onions. So the white onion is the only type of onion I don't have growing. So with an onion set, this right here, you can see is the bottom. That's where the roots are going to come out, and then this top portion is where the top half died back when it went dormant, and it will grow out like this. So you need to place them this ways, and let me get one without a top. There aren't that many without tops, so you can still tell with this tiny one which way it needs to be planted. But the bottom of the onion set looks just like the bottom of a normal onion, so it's fairly obvious which way you need to be planting them. So a quick word on onion fertilization. Because it's a bulb, like the actual onion is a bulb, it's a common misconception that to grow large bulbs you need phosphorus. Such as bone meal. Phosphorus is required, as well as potassium and nitrogen, for plant growth, NPK. Phosphorus primarily encourages strong root systems, hence why it's commonly used for bulb growth. But the size of an onion bulb is actually determined by how many leaves it has. So each one of these leaves represents one of the layers of an onion. So generally, the more leaves on an onion plant as it grows, you'll see more leaves pop up. These aren't just going to stay with 3 leaves, but the more leaves on an onion plant, the larger the bulb is going to be, because each leaf represents one layer. The primary nutrient that encourages foliage and leaf growth is nitrogen. So actually, nitrogen is the primary fertilizer for growing large onion bulbs. But of course, your plant needs all of the nutrients and the minerals. So it's not just I'm only gonna put bone meal and nitrogen on my plants. I need a balanced fertilizer for the ones in this bed, just because that soil is so poor. And then to encourage the top growth that ultimately becomes the size of the bulb, you want to apply nitrogen fertilizer. And onions are pretty heavy feeders, which means they just like a lot of nutrients in their soil. So if you have poor soil, I do highly recommend that you, however you like to grow, whether it's organic or non-organic, just buy a fertilizer and supplement these plants for their growth, or else they just won't grow as well and as big. All right, so both beds are done. This is done. And I still have all of these. Oops. I still have all of these onion sets left, so I have no idea where I'm gonna put them. I'm done planting for today. I'm actually gonna ask my mom if she wants them. Mom, do you want them? She watches my videos.
The green one. Remember the one that was super friendly?
Oh, yeah.
I think it's that one by the rooster.
You know Grady moves around all crazy.
Yeah, it is her.
Yeah.
That one's her.
Sweetheart.
You are an ugly bird.
Which one? We named him Fireball.
He's not ugly, he's beautiful.
He's ugly. Look at
Wow. He's beautiful.
Grady, help me catch.
Alright guys, well, I am going to water these onions in and then head inside because we have movie day with the kids. So, thank you for joining me on this quick little vlog today. I didn't go super in depth with planting onions because both of these methods I'm using right now are new to me. But essentially this is an experiment, so thanks guys. Until the next one.